I want to welcome everyone to the League of Women Voters of the City of New York's Lunch with the League. Meet the candidates for New York's 12th Congressional District. I'm Kai Rosenthal, co-president of the New York City League, and I hope to be soon joined by my other co-president, Deborah Brodheim. We're delighted that you've joined us for the final Lunch with the League event of the season. As most of you know, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences policy through education and advocacy. But what you might not know is the League has a long history of hosting candidate debates, dating back to our founding in the 1920s, then sponsoring the presidential debates in the 1970s and 80s. And in 2022, the League hosted more than 3,000 debates and forums across the country. However, today's event is not a debate. We are here to get to know the candidates for New York 12th Congressional District. We invited all who had declared, Democrats and Republicans, and we're delighted that everyone is here today. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves and share how they will work for the residents of the district if elected. Questions from the audience will follow. So before we begin, I just want to remind everyone to please silence your cell phones and hold any applause until all the candidates have made their introductions. Everyone can see the clock, I assume? And we're going to start with Mr. Alex Boris.
George and I are going to be really good friends by the end of this. It's great to be here at Ethical Culture. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting all of us. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. There's a bunch of really qualified candidates on the stage. We have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to candidate quality. I want to talk about just 3 things that I think set me apart. The first is my effectiveness in office. I've passed 32 bills through the state legislature, which is about the same amount that Congress as a whole passed in 2023. And was ranked by the Center for Effective Lawmaking as the most effective new legislator from New York City. The second thing is when I think about issues that might overturn our democracy, threaten our democracy, I think about AI. I'll be only the 2nd Democrat in Congress ever with a degree in computer science. Ted Lieu is great, but he could use a few friends. And Time magazine actually named me one of the 100 most influential people in the world in AI, a fact that only impressed my grandma when she found out that the Pope was also on that list. But I want to use that knowledge and that influence to fight for you. And third, as Donald Trump loses his grip on power and his popularity, he's going to get meaner and crueler. And I know that because in a small way, it's happening to me. Who here has received text messages or mailers denigrating me? Yep. That's coming from 3 Trump mega donors that don't believe there should be any regulation of AI whatsoever. Got Trump to issue an executive order targeting one of my bills, the RAISE Act. But I kept going. I got the governor to sign it, and it's the only bill in the country targeted by that executive order that's been enacted since it came into effect. And having someone in office that doesn't just talk about beating Donald Trump or write about beating Donald Trump, but has actually beaten him in a legislative fight, that's really terrifying to his mega donors. So really happy to be here with all of you and looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. George Conway.
Thank you, and thank you for having us. I'm a lawyer. I spent 30 years making a career as a lawyer in this district as a litigator. I never thought about running for public office until very recently. It's not my goal to be a lifelong politician. I can't. It's too late for that. The reason why I'm running, you see every day in every newspaper. This is today's New York Times. After Trump drops suit, U.S. allots $1.8 billion as redress to his allies. This is one of the most corrupt thing we've ever seen in American history. But here's the thing. It's also in the Wall Street Journal. You don't see the other corrupt thing he did this week. Insider trading on stocks that are affected by his business. We are getting used to this. That's the problem. I'm running because we need to put an end to it as soon as possible. It has to be job one: impeachment and removal of the President of the United States, his Vice President, and the Cabinet. We cannot afford to do anything less. And yes, it's hard. Yes, it's difficult. Maybe it's even unlikely. But ask yourself this: can we take 32 more months of what we've seen for the last 16? And don't you think it means something that his approval ratings, even among Republicans, are falling through the floor? And don't you think that the cowardice of Republican senators who have allowed him to assume this office once again by their inaction in 2 impeachments, don't you think that at some point their cowardice is going to push them the other way? I say we have to work on that. I say we're going to be stuck with this guy if we say we can't do it, and we have to fight him tooth and nail until he's gone.
Thank you. Christopher Diep.
Hi.
Here's this one.
Okay. Thanks, George. Hi, my name is Chris Diep. I'm the son of Vietnamese refugees. I'm a software engineer, and I volunteer as a kids soccer coach. I'm running because I saw my dad live the American dream, and right now I'm seeing it slip away from more and more people. When my dad left war-torn Vietnam, he came here, had to learn English, and he worked multiple jobs. He worked at a donut shop, he worked at the Marriott Hotel for the healthcare benefits for me and my brother and my mom. And then he was able to get a union job, and he was able to move us from a 1-bed, 1-bath to a home where I had my own room. And nowadays I see layoffs from tech and jobs fewer and fewer to come by. And I want to fix that. I want to help with that. I really think that to power the economy, we need more affordable housing, we need to build more, we need good, stable jobs and meaningful jobs. People, like I see a lot of ambition when I talk to New Yorkers, and they go for what they want. And I would like to see just a national regulation of AI and technology so that we can, move forward and transition to a better future. I volunteer with kids, and a lot of times they are pretty spastic, and I do think they make me optimistic that, we can build a better country for the next 250 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura, Dunn.
Thank you all for being here. So I'm the first woman to enter the race in NY12, and I'm so glad that I'm no longer alone in this race, and I think there needs to be more women in Congress. We are seeing the rollback of rights that you all marched for, that you all achieved, that I benefited from growing up, and that my children may not have at all. Because what we are seeing is not merely a corrupt president, it's also a corrupt Congress, and the guardrails have been removed. So I'm running on accountability more broadly than just going after the president. I believe we need congressional term limits. We need ethical standards for the Supreme Court. We need to stop insider trading by Congress members who are becoming multimillionaires while you and I struggle to make ends meet. We are living in a world that has gone so far corrupt that we need someone with courage to step up, and I'm honored to be the courage candidate. I've been endorsed by Courage for Democracy. I've taken a pledge to make sure impeachment of Donald Trump is my first act in office, and I've gone against Donald Trump before. I actually sued him during his first term in office to protect Title IX. All of you know Title IX is the reason you got accepted to graduate school, to undergraduate school, to any professional degree. It is being rolled back by Donald Trump, and I fought him over that because I'm not going back. I may not have had to fight the way that you had to fight, but I will continue the fight that you started. And so as I sit here today with all my colleagues on both sides, I want you to remember that I alone have actually already drafted and passed federal law, Section 304 of the Violence Against Women Act of 2013. That was from my personal story of being victimized of campus sexual assaults. After I lived through that experience, I made myself public. I shared my name, face, and story at a time when people were silent. And schools are safer because of me. We now have Title IX coordinators in every single school. I didn't just pass that law, I turned around and I enforced it. I have filed more Department of Education complaints under Title IX and more lawsuits than any other attorney in this country. So I'm a fighter, and I'm going to fight for you.
Thank you. Micah Lasher. I'm sorry.
Quite all right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Micah Lasher. I'm a member of the New York State Assembly, lifelong Upper West Sider, and very glad to be with you and grateful to the League and to the Society for hosting us today. I'm running for Congress in this extraordinary district because I believe that the Democratic Party is failing to meet this moment. And we're failing to meet the moment in two big ways. Number one, in being an effective fighting force against Donald Trump and the incipient fascism that he has brought to the White House. And two, in articulating an affirmative agenda for the American people that rebuilds their faith in government and in the Democratic Party as the party that stands for the proposition that government is the best tool we have to improve the material conditions of people's lives. That is the work that I have devoted my career to. 18 years ago, I went to work as an aide to Congressman Nadler. I have worked at all three levels of government, as a top aide to Mike Bloomberg at City Hall, as chief of staff for the New York State Attorney General's office, where I was involved in one of the first government actions against Donald Trump and his phony baloney Trump University, as policy director for Governor Hochul, where I helped index the minimum wage to inflation and dramatically expand the state's child care program, to my time in the State Assembly, where I've been the Assembly's leader on using legislative power to protect New Yorkers and our rights and the rule of law from what's coming out of Donald Trump's administration, including legislation that we are on the verge of passing as part of this year's state budget to protect immigrant New Yorkers from warrantless arrests by ICE at schools and houses of worship and healthcare facilities, and as the Assembly sponsor of a constitutional amendment to allow New York to fight fire with fire and redraw our congressional lines after Texas and other red states stole seats in theirs. That's the fighting spirit that I will bring to Congress. I will know how to do this work from day one because it's been the work of my lifetime. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Jack Schlossberg.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jack Schlossberg. Our campaign slogan is Believe in Something Again. Our country is turning 250 years old this year. New York is turning 400 years old this year. And there are monuments all over this district, New York 12, to a past, to generations that built this country. The UN is in this district. Central Park is in this district. The Empire State Building. The whole world starts counting time every New Year's Eve from New York 12. And I know that if you live here, you agree with me that we're the smartest, most capable people in the entire world. And if it were up to us, if we got to make all the decisions for our country, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in today. But short of that, because that's not how our government works, I'm running for Congress because I still believe in politics. Because today, it's really hard to believe anything that comes out of the president's mouth. We know he's lying to us. We know his cabinet secretaries are lying to us. It's a sick game that we play. But I'll never stop believing in politics. I'll never stop believing in politics as a noble profession. And that's why I'm running, because I want my hometown, the place that I was born and raised and where I've lived my whole life, where my family lives, I want us to have a representative who understands the politics of 2026, because it is different than it was in the past. I wouldn't design it this way if it were up to me, but we live in a new world. We live in a world where you have to understand how legislation and government works. I've been to law school. I've worked in government and on campaigns. You also need to run basically a mini production company to get your message out there. And the Democratic Party is without power, and we are going to be without power for some time. It's going to take us a while to get back. Our campaign has released real policy proposals, original ones that reflect the concerns of the people who live in this district, like deducting your rent from your taxes, like making Trump pay for the permanent perimeter around Trump Tower and investing those funds into cops, teachers, and transit, like our no pay for PrEP and PEP plan that would make the HIV medication, PrEP and DoxyPrep free at point of care. Believe in something again. We got to get our confidence back, and politics should be fun. Thank you so much, and thanks to the League of Women Voters for having us.
Thank you. Nina Schwalbe.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the League in Ethical Culture. I spent a lot of time here as a kid. I grew up down the street. So my name is Nina Schwalbe, and I'm running for Congress because we are in deep trouble. From vaccines to abortion, from science to SNAP to basic rule of law, we are losing our democracy, and we are losing the systems that keep us safe. I'm not going to talk about hantavirus or Ebola, but I am going to talk about measles right now. We have a raging epidemic across the US in 39 states. Now, when you work in public health, you know that measles is a sign that your basic systems are failing. And I've spent my life preventing and fixing exactly those types of systems failures. I've worked in over 100 countries. I've delivered billions of vaccines. I've negotiated with Russia, India, North Korea. I stood up to Big Pharma and I lowered the cost of cervical cancer vaccine by 65%. I faced death threats for that work, and I did it anyway. In March of 2020, my father was one of the first people to get COVID-19. He had no palliative care, no oxygen, no nothing, just me taking care of him as he died, only knowing that I was with him. From then, I took my global fight home. I fought Albany to get ventilators to the city. I fought to keep our kids in school, and I fought to get low-income New Yorkers vaccines first. And from there, the Biden administration tapped me to run their $7 billion vaccine program, which delivered 500 million vaccines around the world. I'm sixth generation in this district. I'm a lesbian and a mom, and I've got a shout out to my kid who's standing in for my campaign manager here today, who has the flu. I don't fight by waving my hands or screaming at people. I fight steady, strategic, smart, and we win. I'm not a legacy Democrat, I'm not a celebrity, and I'm not backed by a billionaire. But I'm a fighter, I'm a scientist, and I'm a mom, and I'm gonna fight for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Caroline Shinkle.
Hello, League of Women Voters. Let's try it again, guys. Hello, League of Women Voters.
Wow.
That was a little bit better. I'm Caroline Shinkle, and I'm running for Congress here in New York 12 as an enterpriser Republican. And I think I'm kind of getting through already because I see Micah wearing a pink tie today, so something is changing here in New York 12. I'm a graduate of MIT and Harvard Law School. I've worked in central banking all over the world and at the Federal Reserve in Washington, D.C., and I've worked at the highest levels of law here in Manhattan. My candidacy is about creating the conditions so that all of us here in New York 12 can thrive as never before. And what does that mean? It means we have to change the architecture of how Washington, D.C. works. So first, I can guarantee you, I will not be in Congress for 34 years. We have a far more immediate challenge before us, and that is to come together and actively work together to save our city, New York City, from the bad policy that has already dramatically eroded our economic infrastructure and then, by definition, our quality of life. So by electing me, my objective is to deliver legislation that will do the following things. That is to protect the paycheck, to drive the cost of money down, to cure inflation, and to balance the budget. And we have the tools to do these things. Each one of these things on their own will have a positive arithmetic impact on our economy and lowering the cost of living, but altogether they will have an exponential impact. I have the experience and background to get this done, and I want you all to know I will be a champion for you, all people of New York 12, regardless of your political affiliation. It's not political, it's about common sense and coming together, and I would be honored to have the opportunity to serve as your next Congresswoman here from New York 12. Together, we can save our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick Timmins.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invite. So nice to be here. So nice to be included in a forum. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. My name is Patrick Timmins. You may recognize that name. I was the lone Democratic opponent to Alvin Bragg back in June. And in that race, I received 70,000 votes, of which nearly 52,000 came from the 12th CD. So I've been excited reconnecting with people that I campaigned with and for back in June. So I'm excited about this race. I'm also a litigator in criminal and civil law for the last 34 years, which I think is probably more time than some people on this panel have been alive. But nonetheless, in the 90s, I was the first ones to prosecute the Bloods and the Latin Kings up in the Bronx as an assistant district attorney. We got verdicts up there, made the Bronx a little bit safer up there. Later on, I became a civil attorney that represented the unions in New York City, Local 100, Local 3, Local 25, you know some of them. And their members, retirees in particular, have come down with asbestos cancer, one of the worst ways to die. It's called mesothelioma. You've seen a lot of that. I've been doing that for 20 years. So I've been fighting for people, whether it's criminally or civilly, for a long time. I consider myself a radical pragmatist. I want us to get away from all this idea of impeaching Trump. We need to turn the page. We need to look at what we can do substantively and not symbolically. There is so much to do, and we need to come up with all the ideas we need necessary so that in 28 and 29, when you look at a presidential election, let's face it, right now, the presidential election comes down to 7 swing states. If we have the agenda that appeals to 7 swing states, including ideas like dental and vision for Medicare, including a no tax whatsoever on Social Security at any rate that you're making, including term limits, including, and this came up the other day, I have 5 sisters and a very loud Irish mother. They are talking about when they have calculated their Social Security credits. Do you know that women, and you do know this, of course, you don't get a single credit for any quarter where you birthed the child and raised the child. So most of my sisters have been out 7 or 8 years on Social Security because they weren't working. That's appalling. We need to start getting ideas through and lead that way. And by the way, I'm not the only one who doesn't want to impeach Trump. A week ago, Hakeem Jeffries agrees with me.
I'm sorry, Mr. Timmins.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you to all the candidates. Now is the time. And as I mentioned earlier, this is not a typical debater forum. We are now going to turn all the questions to the audience. So we have 3 people running around with mics. And I just want to give the audience some guidelines, just some reminders, that this is a time to ask a question, not to make a statement, not to make a comment. So a question, please. Also, if you can direct your question to a particular candidate, or if there are 2 candidates, we want to get to as many questions as we can, so please try and be brief and concise in your question. And please don't yell out your questions. We will wait for the mic to come to you. We will come over, and we'll go in order as I see the hands raised in the room. So please, start raising your hands.
Thank you. My question is for Mr. Schlossberg.
We will fix the reception in your well.
Does this work?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Little breathing break there. My question is for Mr. Schlossberg. Would you please describe your qualifications and what makes you a productive, what would make you a productive member of Congress, as in like committees or particular interests that you might want to serve on? Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate your question. I'm 33 years old. I've got a lot of life experience. I grew up here. I went to law school and business school, and I worked at the State Department and abroad in Japan for a Japanese company before that. I thought I was going to be an environmental lawyer. I thought that's what the universe had in store for me. But instead, I went to go work for the Biden campaign, the Biden-Harris campaign in 2024. And I built a following of millions of people by speaking out on social media. And I was the last person who ever thought I would be a content creator, except maybe my mother, maybe the last person who thought that. But I didn't expect that. That was not my plan. But I built a fan base, and I'm very proud to have waved the flag for our party all across this country in every single swing state, and to be one of the only Democrats who has experience breaking through and getting our message out there and standing up and speaking truth to power and putting my neck on the line. So I think I've got the unique skill set that would make me an incredible congressperson for this district, especially because no matter who gets elected, we're all going to be freshmen. We're all going to be small fish in a big pond. But no matter where I go in my life, as hard as I try, I stick out pretty badly everywhere I go. And I think that's a huge value to a member of Congress, because I think that the member of Congress's job is to bring back funds for their district and to try to pass laws in Congress. That's what I'm interested in doing. I know how to get along with all types of people. I actually love hanging out with people who disagree with me. That's why Caroline and I were such good friends in law school. Well, I'm happy to see her here today. I'm excited by the opportunity. I've also been able to galvanize the very people that the Democratic Party is hemorrhaging, young people especially, who don't have a reason to believe in our party that they have their back. I understand I don't have the same resume as others who are sitting up here. I understand that I have not served in local government. But I can assure you I've been working very, very hard on things that I care about my entire life. And I've also had the experience of representing a legacy around the world and here at home that is important to people. It means a lot to people. It means a lot to me. And it's under attack right now from the federal government. And it's not just my family. It's all of our families and all the generations who came before us who built this country. So I'm proud to be running in this race, and I think I would bring a unique, my unique qualifications are I can get stuff done by bringing people together. So thank you.
Thank you. Hazel over there, Sandra, over at just before, we've asked the audience to be brief and concise in their questions, and if we can ask the same of the candidates to be brief and concise and direct in your answers, that would be great. Thank you.
I'd like to direct this to Alex, Micah, and Nina. There's a possibility that you will be in the minority again, or that you'll be in the majority. Would you explain to us the difference in your priorities if you're in the minority or if you're in the majority if you're elected? Thank you.
I'm happy to take the first stab at that. We will not be in the minority in the House, and I will do everything I can between July and November to make sure that that is true. And I, regardless of what happens in this primary, and I think everyone else would say the same, except maybe Caroline. But if we are, what you lose is the ability to own the agenda of a committee. So in particular, it's really going to cut down on the ability to investigate the Trump administration, to have subpoena power anywhere, and to hold the people around him to account. That will be a tool that we'll lose. We'll still be able to speak up at hearings and call people to account there, but there'll be just a limited ability to get access to raw documents. In terms of, well, also things that go along partisan lines in terms of gun control or aspects like that will be limited. But there are places of bipartisan agreement that whether we're in the majority or the minority, I hope that we are able to make progress. Housing is one of them. You're seeing a lot of housing bills move forward. One in the Senate just passed 89-10, written by Elizabeth Warren and Tim Scott. I think finding ways to make it easier and quicker to build housing and getting more resources to dense urban areas like New York City will happen regardless. I also frankly think regulation of tech and AI is one that you've seen a lot more bipartisan movement in, especially in the past month, where we've had 3 or 4 bipartisan bills get introduced. One from Ted Lieu and Jay Olbernarty, one from Ted Cruz and Brian Schatz, who I think agree on absolutely nothing except this. And so parts of that agenda will still be very important to move forward. I'll add that in Albany, even though we've been in the majority for basically my whole life, slight exaggeration, but close, I have always made it a point to reach out to the other side, to engage with them, to have the conversation with the ranking member of the committee and the minority floor leader. I'm proud that of the 32 bills I've passed, every single one has gotten at least one Republican vote. Not because that was a rule of mine. I put forward a gun bill, I put forward a gender identity bill, bills that I didn't expect to get minority votes, but I always had the conversation, and I've built that muscle in Albany that is not necessary there, but absolutely will be necessary to get things done in D.C.
Thank you. Mr. Lasher?
I also share an optimism that we will be in the House majority come November, but I think that it's a great question, and I think it points to some of where Democrats have come up short in our time in the minority and our inability to act like the opposition party that we are, because there are real tools that Democrats, even in the minority, can be using and should be using to slow and stall the Trump agenda. Tools like discharge petitions, which are how we ended up with at least some of the Epstein files being released. We should be putting discharge petitions forward every week on a different issue that highlights the kleptocracy and autocracy that has been brought to our country. The Rules Committee amendment process, in which any member of the House can amend a bill on its way to the floor and entitle every member of the House to 5 minutes of speaking time, which can tack an 18-hour time tax to any bill headed to the floor. We should be doing that to slow Mike Johnson and Donald Trump down from the breakage they are doing to the country. And I think that's the heart of it, which is if, in some awful circumstance, we are still in the minority, the number one job of Democrats, and I look forward to a day when we can get back to bipartisanship, but for as long as we are fully the opposition party, our job is to slow down and stall the breakage that these people are doing to our rule of law and to our democracy long enough such that Democrats can get back enough power to begin putting the pieces back together.
Thank you. Ms. Schwalbe?
Thank you for the question, and here I actually might disagree. My priority in either a Democratic-led Congress or a Republican one is healthcare for all with a single-payer system. My day one agenda is the American Health Security Act, which lowers the cost of drugs, which provides primary care to everyone, and which protects and expands Medicaid, Medicare, and the Affordable Care Act. 32% of people in our district benefit from some sort of health subsidy from the federal government. That can be done with a Republican or a Democratic Congress because there's a lot of bipartisan support for the cost of health care. It's the number one concern. If we do get a Democratic majority, we need to change the Democrats. I worked for the Biden administration, and we lost our opportunity by not being tough. I'm also running because I believe, not as a career politician, if we want to change the way Washington works, we have to change the type of Democrats we send to Washington. Thank you.
Thank you. Susie.
This question is for George Conway. You have historically been a Republican. You have changed parties to run as a Democrat, and we understand why. It's a virtuous proposition that you are running on. But once Trump is hopefully gone in 28, that we can all hope for, that this will end. Do you if you were to be elected, would you run again? And if so, would you then continue to run as a Democrat? Would you vote as a Democrat, or would you refer back to your history?
Maybe this sounds like a mob movie thing. The Republican Party is dead to me. There is no Republican Party as far as I'm concerned. The Republican Party, when I left it in 2018, I realized it had become nothing but a personality cult, and it wasn't even that bad in 2018. I've been through all these candidate forums, and I really don't feel that there's a lot of difference between what I'm hearing and what I agree with. I agree with almost everything that people are talking about when it comes to affordability, health care, abortion, infrastructure, and I get that I'd be a representative of this district, and I would try to represent this district the way it wants to be represented. But my goal is, as I said, first and foremost, to get rid of this guy, because I don't think we can survive if we don't, and I don't think we can live with ourselves if we don't try. That's step one. Step two, and I said this on the very first day that I announced, which was January 6th of this year, we need a second American Reconstruction. As a lawyer, I have I have the investigative skills. I conducted investigations, and I want to spend a term holding Trump accountable and hopefully getting rid of him. And then the rest of my time in Congress, which would not exceed 2 terms, because I want to go on to my life and lead the life I was going to lead without Donald Trump having derailed it. I want to help with a second American Reconstruction, is what I called it on January 6th. We need to pass laws to make sure this threat to autocracy never happens again, and that includes laws that prevent politicization and the abuse of the Justice Department, laws that change who gets to determine whether a president is sufficiently demented, like this one under the 25th Amendment, laws that prevent the president from impounding or cutting off funds to agencies that have been fully funded by acts of Congress, and criminalizing more of the kinds of misconduct that we are seeing today, including the insider trading by the President of the United States, and this use of these attempts to basically pay himself off and pay his friends off. That's all criminal, and we need a mechanism to make sure that it never happens again.
Thank you. Judy, up front.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for coming. I'm a member of the committee, and we are really delighted with this turnout, and we appreciate your being here. My question is for Micah Lasher, and my question is, why do you think you are the best candidate to fight Trump, which is really...
I think that we're running for a very specific job. We're running for the job of how to use legislative power to fight back. And that is exactly what I have been doing. From day one, my time in the Assembly, when Donald Trump proposed to illegally withhold funds from New York, I introduced legislation to allow New York to hold back funds that are due to the federal government. When we woke up last summer to learn that RFK Jr.'s CDC had shut down vaccine guidance such that you couldn't get a vaccine at your local pharmacy, I wrote legislation to empower the state health department to issue vaccine guidance so we could access COVID vaccines. When ICE was terrorizing our immigrant neighbors, I wrote the legislation I mentioned earlier to prohibit warrantless arrests at sensitive locations. And when Donald Trump called up the governor of Texas and said, steal me 5 congressional seats, I didn't wait around for somebody to say what we should do. I wrote legislation to allow New York to fight fire with fire. That's the job we're running for. As Alex said at the beginning, there are many fine people on the stage. We share a lot of views, and I think everybody up here has something really meaningful to contribute. I think that the work before us is that of legislative work to make change. And I should also add, you brought up the question of how we fight back against Donald Trump. We do need to walk and chew gum at the same time. We do need to pass laws that improve the material conditions of people's lives. And that's something I've been doing also for years, like indexing the minimum wage to inflation, like dramatically increasing access to child care in New York State. And so for the job at hand, I think that the proven record of achievement and the plans that I have for the future are what make me qualified.
Thank you. Jane, right here.
Thank you. This question is for Mr. Boris, Mr. Lasher, and Mr. Schlossberg. You've all condemned anti-Semitism and voiced support for Israel's security, but each of you has drawn a different line on U.S. weapons sales and aid. If Israel launches a major ground offensive into Gaza tomorrow, that results in multiple civilian casualties, would you vote to block military aid? And if so, what threshold would trigger that vote?
Why don't we start, Mr. Schlossberg?
Thank you for that important question. This is a very important Thank you for that question. It's a very important issue to me. I'm proud of my position on this issue. I have opposed the war in Iran since day one. I believe that opposing the war in Iran, President Trump's lawless war of choice that we are now losing, opposing that war means opposing all funding for the war. And that's why I have said publicly, and will repeat today, that I would vote against sending additional weapons to Israel for the time being as we conduct this war. Bombs, bulldozers for the West Bank to reclaim land that is in violation of international law. And I think that we need to get serious here and draw a hard line. So my position is clear that I would not vote to continue funding weapons for Israel. That being said, I do believe that the Iron Dome is an important missile defense program that keeps civilians safe in Israel. There are 600,000 Americans who live in Israel. I think that the United States should not pull out its funding for the Iron Dome, and that's for the same reason I think that we should stop sending bombs to Israel, because I want to protect civilians.
Thank you. Mr. Lasher?
Thank you so much for the question, and I care deeply about the question of how we use American power to bring safety and security both to Israelis and Palestinians. And I find the killing of tens of thousands of Palestinians in Gaza horrific, as well as deeply oppose the West Bank settlement expansion that is one of the most significant obstacles to peace in the region. And I think that the United States government needs to bring a great deal more pressure to bear on the Netanyahu government, which I think in many respects has driven the country off the rails. It is very hard to contemplate these questions as hypotheticals because the circumstances of any military conflict are specific. Obviously, the difference between an unprovoked ground invasion versus a response to October 7th, these are very different circumstances. So I have difficulty answering in the hypothetical, but I certainly would support every possible effort to bring concrete, effective pressure to bear, both on the Israelis and the Palestinians, to get back to some kind of path to self-determination for both peoples.
Thank you. Mr. Boris?
We've seen atrocities in Gaza, and Israel is an ally, and I don't want to compromise the safety of anyone living in Israel. And we need to have real conversations with our allies about what it takes to get to peace and to preserve lives of everyone in the Middle East. We have a process for that, which is called Leahy law vetting. And it is supposed to be the process by which the U.S. determines whether there are violations of human rights and ensuring that all of our aid is used consistent with American laws and American values. And that applies to everyone, including Israel. We've seen holes in that process with many countries, not just with Israel. And I've called on my website for that process to be strengthened. The Safeguard Act is one of many things that we could do to have real reporting on where weapons are used, follow-ups, which currently we don't do, and taking it out of political hands, because these are messy, dangerous situations, and we should have the expertise of the State Department that is taking an unbiased view on what's happening on the ground and determining when there are violations of U.S. law. So we have the laws that are supposed to deal with this. They are not currently, and we should all own up to the fact that they are not. And I would vote strongly, and I would make efforts strongly to strengthen those laws so that universally we have a standard that makes sure all of our weapons, whether to Israel, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, anywhere, are used always consistent with American laws and American values. I would also say that this is a shifting conversation. Netanyahu himself has said it's time to wind down U.S. aid to Israel. There's going to be a conversation about what the next MOU looks like, and we should bring to bear leverage that we have in shaping that conversation to ensure there's peace. Now, part of that is not pre-committing to certain things that we will or won't do in that negotiation, but I think it's very important that the U.S. not just set up a process for peace or a long-term, eventual solution for peace, but is doing everything we can to expeditiously bring about a two-state solution and a lasting peace in the Middle East.
Thank you. Right there. No, right next. Yeah, right there. Yep. Thank you.
Hi. This question is for Alex, George, and Laura. Right now, across the country, Democratic candidates are benefiting from the massive unpopularity of the Trump administration. But that's not enough in the long term, and the popularity of the Democratic Party has been eroding for the last decade or so. What would you propose to do to improve the image of the Democratic Party across the country?
Why don't we start with Ms. Dunn?
So I think we've been losing voters because of the collection of wealth at the top. We need congressional term limits because we shouldn't have people in office decade after decade after decade becoming multimillionaires off of stock trades. We need the younger generation to be brought up, and that is a blunt failure of this Democratic Party. I've been in DC, I've worked in these circles, and I was told repeatedly, wait in line when it's your turn. That's not how this works. We bring up every generation behind us because that's leadership. We need the next generation. They're the ones inheriting all the problems that we are leaving. So I think we need to get back to the people. We need to end the insider trading. We need to put congressional term limits, and we need to have ethical standards on the Supreme Court. People are seeing the corruption, and they're seeing Democrats act not all that dissimilar to Republicans. They're collecting money on Capitol Hill just like everyone else. They're taking AIPAC funding. They're taking crypto money. They're taking AI money. We have to look different than the other party because the younger generation isn't going to tolerate corruption. They will go independent and they will abandon this party. I want this party to stay the party of civil rights and social justice, and that requires us to focus on the middle class and end the elitism and the corruption.
Thank you. Mr. Conway?
I think there are a couple things going on with popularity, the relative unpopularity of the Democratic Party, which I don't think compares to what is becoming of the Republican Party. The first is that part of the country is just suffused with lies, and the image of what Democrats are is projected by Fox News and so many different aspects of the media, the internet and media culture that we are now in, where people basically characterize Democrats who are perfectly reasonable as, spending all of their time talking about issues that don't relate to them. That's a communications problem. I think the more fundamental problem is that a lot of Democrats are disenchanted with their party because it doesn't fight hard enough. And that's where we need a little new blood in the Democratic Party. That's where I think I fit in. And that's where I think I, as someone who has made the political journey that I have made, I think I can create a little running room for the other people who want to fight a little bit harder and are looking for the opportunity to.
Thank you. Mr. Boris?
I largely agree, and I think that's two sides of the same coin from what we just heard. Democrats need to be showing up everywhere and talking to everyone and not writing anyone off. And it's important that we continue to do that. In the state assembly, I every year stand up and do a town hall, 2 hours of unscreened questions, anything that anyone wants to ask, and I'm happy to answer them publicly. I would continue that. I would encourage my fellow colleagues to do that. We also need to fight hard and deliver and actually be focused on real issues and put up fights where they are. And we need to have a positive vision that goes out and passes bills and gets things done and moves them forward quickly. What we've seen too much is celebrating putting together one massive bill, but not focused on dollars getting out the door and impacting people's lives. And so we passed, for example, the Inflation Reduction Act, which was supposed to be the biggest investment in climate ever. And no one seemed to notice that it happened because the projects didn't get started by the next election, and now they've all been walked back. And so making sure that we follow all the way through to delivery so that there's actually a result that people feel is a really important way to change the conversation and make sure that people see that Democrats are delivering for them. And then, of course, we need to hold ourselves to an incredibly high ethical standard. And that means, of course, as Laura said, fighting to ban insider trading and stock trading. And George brought up the president's 3,700 trades in the first quarter in the last week, which is, if you look at how many minutes the market was open, that's a trade every 6.5 minutes for 3 months while running the free world. So we need to stand up for all of that. And then we also need to hold ourselves to the higher standards and do that ourselves. I've taken a pledge to not take any PAC money other than from labor unions, is the only that I accept. And I continue to go out, talk to individuals, and fight in that way. We need to show that we are above reproach, and that is how we ultimately win people over.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks. This is a question for the three female candidates in the race who have been routinely omitted from splashy magazine covers and the stage of other forums. Can you tell us a little bit about the traction that you've had trouble getting to get your point across in this race and your path to victory despite that? Nina, I guess I'd like to start with Nina and then Laura and Caroline. Thanks.
I think you must have been a teacher to choose who goes first, second, and third. It's been incredibly frustrating, like seriously, no joke. It's like we don't exist. And it's super weird. I don't think I've had that experience ever, having grown up in New York 12, where I thought as a woman you got equal time. I've learned so much that I didn't know about the media. First of all, like, if they're privately owned, they can cover whoever they want, and it's just up to them. I thought there was, some of the lawyers can go into more depth on this, but it's fascinating. They don't have to give fair play or equal play if they're privately owned. And we have been systematically, and I love it. Like, the reasons we get, oh, well, there's a threshold. Well, what's the threshold? You're like, they don't really answer. And then the threshold changes, or it's published on our website. So it's been frustrating, and I think it's probably strengthened all of our fight and all of our resolve, because it is 2026, and they cannot ignore women. It just ain't happening. And we're not going away. We have hundreds of volunteers now on the streets, banging on doors. We're doing all earned social media. When you get an ad from me, we're not paying for it. That just came up because actually you were clicking something. And we're just going to keep fighting. One of the things that we've all done is I think we're at the risk of super annoying the journalists, because every time they don't cover us, we call and call and call and say, where was my name? I think you forgot us. Where was our name? And we need you to do that too. And so my call to action to you on this is, every time you see the four guys, ask, where are the women? So that's a call to action, in addition to vote louder.
Thank you. Ms. Dunn.
Thank you, Nina. And thank you for that question. It is very painful to be a highly qualified woman and to see that you are intentionally and actively being erased. Some of these barriers that have been created have been expecting us to raise $1 million as first-time candidates in under 3 months. That's insane. No one can do that. Literally no one. So when you join a club and you join a forum and you join a league, tell them you actually care about democracy and want to hear from every single candidate, and you don't want it to be about money, because that is part to the previous question of the corruption of our party. We all complain about Citizens United, and yet you erase us based off how much money we have. So you can't have it both ways. If you're going to oppose money, and ask for democracy. I'm honored to say that I'm at 5% polling despite having been erased. And you know why that is? I go out every single day and I sweat and I freeze and I shake everyone's hands, and I do it for hours and hours and hours until I lose my voice. Because people respect that I show up. That is who I am. I don't care if you want to erase me. I'm going to be on the block and see your face, and I'm going to be at your farmer's market, and I'm not going to go away because I'm not intimidated. I have a TED Talk with 1.25 million views calling for the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment, something that many of you fought for. I'm going to make sure that's passed. I want to continue Carolyn Maloney's legacy. Women have a place in this democracy, and I'm sad that we're not more female candidates sitting up here, but you guys have the power to fund us rather than the men. You have a choice of who you back. So if you want to see more women, then step up. The amount of people I've heard say they want to see a female president, but they're going to vote for a man for Congress. Guess what? You got to get us into Congress before we can become president, and I would love to have that opportunity in my lifetime for a female president.
Thank you. Ms. Shinkle?
Hello. Yes, this is working. I think my experience has been even a little bit turbocharged beyond that, because not only am I one of the few women who decided to step up to run, and I give anybody at this table credit for doing this. It's an extremely difficult thing to do in a place like Manhattan, but I am also doing it as a Republican. And I'm doing it as a common sense Republican. But when you hear the R word here in New York 12, a lot of people sort of shut down. And part of my mission is fighting against that narrative that no Republican can get traction, that we can't talk to each other about these really important issues that at the end of the day really aren't even political in my estimation. We have a set of tools that we can use that are pragmatic. It's about coming together and doing what's best for our city and the people of New York 12. It's not political, it's common sense over crazy. That's really why I'm running. And I think, to be on this stage and to share the stage with all of these candidates is such an honor. I present a little bit of a different playbook and a different set of ideas than some of my colleagues here. But I think at the end of the day, it's about coming together. It's about pragmatism. It's about doing what's right. And I think regardless of your political affiliation, when you wake up in the morning here in New York 12, the city, New York City, the city we all know and love, there's been an extreme degradation of quality of life. And I think most people would agree with that. From crime to this creeping socialism in our city, to anti-Semitism, to the cost of living in the city. Many New Yorkers are getting priced out of their own neighborhoods. It's not right. And again, I think there are tools we can use to really address the root of the problem. So I would be honored to have that opportunity to serve all of you. As I said at the outset, I don't plan to be in Congress for 34 years. Congressman Nadler was first elected before I was born. So I do agree with my colleagues that it is time for some new leadership and some fresh thinking. I would love to have that opportunity. And I think it's a really incredible moment that the three women on this stage, we may differ very much politically on the issues, but we can agree on supporting women. It's about supporting women at the end of the day. That's good for everybody.
Thank you.
I wish I could say I was born before Jerry was born.
Hi. I'd like everyone to answer the question of whether you believe that Senator Sanders has a point in asking to pass a moratorium on the development of data centers and AI until we understand what the impacts are and what guardrails we need. So if you are elected to go to the House, what would your vote be? This should not be a 15-minute answer, I don't think. And I also want to say in defense, I am so grateful that Jerry Nadler served all the years that he served. That's for me.
Thank you. So it's a yes or no question whether you'll support a moratorium on AI centers, data centers. So why don't we start with Mr. Timmins?
Yes.
No. Ms. Schwalbe?
We need to redo the whole AI thing. I'm not so big on it. Yes.
Mr. Schlossberg?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
I'm not going to give a yes or no answer. I'd really want to study it.
Yes, I would support Bernie and AOC's bill.
Great, thank you. Other questions? While people think of some questions, I have a couple. Also, this is a yes or no. We'll start at this end. Do you support mid-decade redistricting in New York State? Mr. Boris?
Yes, as a response, while nationally we should move to ban it once we're in charge, but yes.
Mr. Conway?
exactly what he just said. Yes. Yes, but we need to work toward nonpartisan, non-racial redistricting everywhere.
Yes, and then independent redistricting commissions.
We're all agreed.
I can only agree.
Yes, and I introduced the bill to do it as a response and triggered by the events of Texas, and would vehemently support a national ban on partisan gerrymandering in Congress.
Mr. Schlossberg?
I'm very worried about where we're headed on the gerrymandering issue. I know that it is something that people have latched onto as a way to fight back. I really want to fight back myself. I make no qualms about how big of a threat Donald Trump is to our democracy, but I do worry. I do worry about a race to the bottom. I understand that time is of the essence, and I've got to answer this question, and we've got to get back control of Congress. So I would say that it would depend on the legislation for me, and it would depend on the reading of the New York State's Constitution.
Ms. Schwalbe?
The key is the word independent.
Ms. Shinkle?
Agree. I do not support partisan gerrymandering.
Mr. Timmins?
Yes, we need all the focus we can get on this problem.
Yes, I have a question. When Mayor Mondami ran for mayor, he did not speak at all about affordability and climate change. He focused on affordability and didn't mention climate change at all, although he has voted on climate change bills in the Assembly. And yet we know that climate change is affecting the cost of food, public health, housing, etc. Would you raise the issue of climate change as an affordability issue in your campaign and if you're elected?
Is this for a particular candidate? For all of them? Okay. How about we're going to start in the middle with Mr. Lasher?
Yes, absolutely, and I'm very proud of work that I've done to pass the All-Electric Buildings Act in New York State, to pass legislation last year to unlock wind and solar energy development, and I'm very proud to be endorsed by the League of Conservation Voters in this campaign. We have to bring climate change to the forefront of our conversation, and we have to restore America's role on the world stage in leading efforts for renewable energy transition. We need to rejoin the Paris Climate Accords. We need to completely reverse the Trump administration's evisceration of federal investment in clean energy, because if we don't, I'm the parent of 3 kids, they will live in an uninhabitable world before too long.
Ms. Dunn?
So I view climate change primarily as a public health issue. We are seeing Alzheimer's being connected with air pollution. We are seeing higher rates of infertility because we have chemicals in so many of our products. We have so many issues that are coming from climate change, and yes, affordability is part of that. We know electrical bills are rising. We know that clean energy is a massive issue, and it is controversial, but I believe that nuclear energy unfortunately has to be part of our energy solution. I don't think it'll just be wind that can solve this problem, or some of the other clean energies. We also have an infrastructure problem that is tied to climate change. As we move to electric cars, they're heavier than our infrastructure can support. So there's so many issues. Climate really touches everything, and so it should be at the center of the debate. And I would love to move it past bipartisanship. Everyone should care about the clean air we breathe, the clean water. I'm a triathlete. I've been threatened with a swim in the Hudson River, and I've been terrified to death of it. Thankfully, the swim was canceled during my triathlon, so I've not had the pleasure. But I would love to swim in it one day because it is clean. And wouldn't that be beautiful if you left a cleaner world for your grandchildren and your children?
Thank you. Mr. Diep?
Yes, so we need to do something about climate change. I'm not a fan of the president withholding funds for research. I really think the solution here is investing in education and our higher education institutions so that we can find novel solutions, and then we could also invest in high-speed rail and start building and thinking bigger.
Thank you. Mr. Conway?
Climate change affects everything, as Laura said. It affects the economy. It affects our personal finances. It affects our health. It affects the way we live our lives, and it affects our children's future more than anything else. And I believe that we have to get back on the fight against climate change, and we have to restore the Paris Accords, rejoin the Paris Accords, and join with the international community in addressing the problem that affects every single one of us every single day, and is going to affect our lifetimes and our children's lifetimes.
Thank you. Mr. Boris?
About a year ago, I was having a conversation with a startup founder in Queens. I think it was Long Island City. And I said, what's the biggest challenge you're facing? I figured it was maybe getting employees and housing or regulation. And he said, it's power. It's the cost of utilities. We're losing jobs in the city. We've lost tens of thousands of jobs in the state because we haven't been able to provide reliable power. So it's affecting affordability on that side. So to answer your question, yes, it's related to affordability. Yes, I will talk about it on the campaign trail and already have, both on the economic impacts, but also on families' budgets. As they're trying to balance their budget, their utility bills just keep going up and up and up. And we need to be loud about the fact that solar is now the cheapest form of energy, that wind is not far behind, that investing in renewable is actually how you lower families' costs, and that investing in natural gas, in putting pipelines in that are often, we do this, you replaced a leak-prone pipe. That means a pipe that wasn't leaking, and that you, instead of repairing it, put in a brand new one so you could have a full capital expenditure and then turn around as a utility and charge 10% more and be reimbursed and boost everyone's utility rates. We need to be cracking down on that and taking away that guarantee to serve and other aspects that we've seen that boost up people's utility costs. So yes, the transition to a green economy not only reduces people's costs directly, but also make sure that the jobs of the future are here in New York instead of elsewhere.
Thank you. Mr. Timmins?
With affordability and going green, I think it's critical because in this CD, we are facing Local Law 97. So we need to convert our waste. That needs to be a new movement in America, to convert waste into energy. And we also need to look at clean nuclear, because that Local Law 97, a lot of people live in co-ops and condominiums in CD-12. Those maintenance costs are going to really rocket beginning 2030. So we have to have that alternative, and that is to convert waste, whether it's the West Side restaurants or if it's Madison Square Garden. We need to convert waste into methanol so that we can have cheaper electricity.
Thank you. Ms. Shinkle?
I think we can all agree that we want to promote and cultivate a safe, clean environment. I'm in favor of an all energy options on the table approach. Let the private market drive down the cost of alternatives. And I think it's important to incentivize technology and incentivize innovation so we can pursue new innovation when it comes to this area of alternative forms of energy. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, there is no reason why the cost of energy in a place like New York should be almost 60% higher than the national average. That's failure.
Thank you. Ms. Schwalbe?
Great. Thank you for the question. And I'm sorry, actually, interestingly, I think none of the women were invited to the League of Conservation Voters debate, if I'm correct. So we could spend hours talking about this because it's such an important issue here and everywhere around the world. I mean, I think we probably agree on the legislative priorities, which are reinvest in renewables, stop funding fossil fuel, and re-engage in the Paris climate agreements. And more than that, the effects on New York 12 are pretty stark. We have people dying of extreme heat. We have people dying of extreme cold. Those are not spurious associations. That's a direct result of climate change. Yesterday, we had a warning on our air quality, and I think probably many people remember when we had the wildfires in Canada and the smoke that was here, and you couldn't see out your window. Laura mentioned climate as a major health problem. It's a health problem from the flooding, and again, we remember Sandy and the other extreme weather incidences that have hit our city. But I want to stop again and talk a little bit about mosquitoes. I've been waiting for the question on Ebola or hantavirus. But I will tell you that we had a case of chikungunya virus in Long Island a little earlier in this year. That's carried by a particular type of mosquito, the same one that malaria, and dengue, and a bunch of other nasty diseases that we didn't have before in this region of the world. And that's because of climate change, those mosquitoes are migrating north. So affordability, healthcare, this is a major issue that affects everything that we do, and I'm surprised it's not on the top of the agenda in every forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schlossberg?
Thank you for your question. I studied environmental law. This is something I care a lot about and I've spent a lot of time thinking about. So the environmental laws that our country uses to regulate our national economy date back to the 1970s, the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. And these have been amended since then, but we need to pass new legislation in this country to give the federal government the authority to regulate the pollutants like CO2 and methane and others that are responsible for climate change. Because right now, under this current court's precedent and the current EPA, they say that the United States federal government does not have the authority to regulate CO2, that we don't have the authority to regulate other greenhouse gases. So one thing I would want to do if elected to Congress is introduce legislation to add CO2 and methane as pollutants under the Clean Air Act to give the EPA the authority to regulate them. I also think, I've thought a lot about this, I think climate and the environment, it works on me to talk about polar bears because I happen to love them, and it works on me to talk about saving the world because I want to, but I think this is a corruption issue. This really is about polluters not paying for negative costs, negative externalities that they dump onto our society, polluters who aren't paying for the cost of cleaning up their mess and not paying for the cost of how much carbon they release into the atmosphere. And until we put prices on those things, it's going to be really hard to regulate it from the top down. And I think that I want to try to make green issues popular again. I think that there's a lot of room here, especially in young people, but not just young in age, young at heart, everybody who understands this issue and why it's so important to us. And I think that Democrats shouldn't be afraid to run on it.
Thank you. We're going to let's take two final questions.
Philosophically, do you believe that New York City should remain a sanctuary city?
This is for everyone. Okay, so why don't we start with Mr. Boris? The question is, do you believe that New York City should remain a sanctuary city?
Philosophically, legally, literally, any adverb you want to put on it, yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Diep?
As a child of immigrants, yes.
Ms. Dunn?
New York's entire history is immigrants, so we should keep that rich history.
Absolutely. It was a sanctuary city for my great-grandparents who fled Eastern Europe in the pogroms, and it is part of who we are as a city, and it's also critical for our economic health. We haven't had a single year in my lifetime of population growth in this city if you do not account for international migration. And so Donald Trump's message to the world that says, don't come here, not only is it immoral and not who we are, it is a direct assault on the economic health and prosperity of our great city.
Thank you. Mr. Schlossberg?
Yes, I do. I also think things are going to get worse in our political environment. There's a lot more coming of what we've experienced in the last 2 years. ICE will come back here, and they will cause more trouble and violate more additional civil rights. And I want to make sure that New York stands strong and represents the values that we all share on this stage. I certainly share, and make sure that we remain a safe place for immigrants to be.
Thank you. Ms. Schwalbe?
Yeah, let's go with sanctuary city, sanctuary state, and sanctuary country.
Thank you. Ms. Shinkle?
I want New York City to be a safe city. I support legal immigration. I also support our law enforcement. So I want to empower our law enforcement to focus on their mission of getting the worst of the worst dangerous criminals off our streets. That should be their focus.
Mr. Timmins?
Yes, we need to protect everyone here.
Thank you. And one final question.
I think we've all heard that the ship of democracy is sinking and we're all scared. If you got to Congress, where would you start?
how will you make a change? How will you keep this sinking ship from cratering to the bottom?
Okay, this is a big question. And we have 30 seconds each. So, Mr. Timmins, we will start at that end. 30 seconds.
We need to have a robust agenda. We do not need to impeach Donald Trump. It's going to bog down presenting the ideas we need to go forward and to have such ideas that we can win the presidency in 2029.
Thank you. Ms. Shinkle.
We have to do the work. This is the modern day Manhattan Project, as I like to call it. Running as a Republican in a place like New York 12, it's not an easy thing to do, but I think it's important for all of you to have a real choice on the ballot, a real alternative, a quality alternative to the status quo. That's why I'm running, and at the end of the day, it's about coming together, being pragmatic, and working with those across the aisle. One thing that I will promise to all of you that I don't think many of my colleagues at this table can is that day one, I will be able to secure critical federal funding for you, for this district, by working with leadership. That is something that probably none of my opponents can promise because they will be focused, most of them, on impeachment and obstruction. I don't think that's productive. I want to do something positive for New York 12. I want to turbocharge the economic framework of this city and this country so that each of you, regardless of who you are, where you're from, what you look like, you can build, whether it's a company, a career, a family, a future. That's what it's all about.
Thank you. Ms. Schwalbe.
A year ago, great. A little over a year ago, Trump fired 200,000 of my colleagues working in government, in science, in public health. He cut life-saving programs, and tens of millions of people, including in this city, lost access to care. Congress did nothing, and that's why I'm running. We need a new Democratic Party which changes the status quo.
Thank you. Mr. Schlossberg.
Money in politics is a corrosive force. Our campaign, my campaign, does not have a super PAC. We don't take money from corporate PACs, from AI companies, from APAC. We have no special interest groups funding our campaign. I believe that that's really important, and I believe that campaign finance and overturning Citizens United is the most important, or at least one of, in addition to passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, things that we need to do. Because until we get the corrosive influence of money out of our politics and in our primaries like this one, I think it's going to be really hard to get a progressive agenda passed.
Thank you. Mr. Lasher.
We need to restore the rule of law and a level playing field in our democracy in every way we can. So the Freedom to Vote Act to make sure that we have free and fair elections for future election cycles, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act to restore the promise of the Voting Rights Act, campaign finance reform, and expanded Supreme Court with term limits to give us a fresh look at Citizens United, statehood for D.C., and a pathway to statehood for Puerto Rico to deal with the anti-majoritarian nature of the United States Senate, broad legal reconstruction of the statutes that Trump and his people have trampled over, like the War Powers Resolution, the Impoundment Act, the depoliticization of DOJ. We need to attack every single piece of our democracy that the Republicans have twisted so we can hold on to the democracy that we love and know.
Thank you. Ms. Dunn.
Right now, the Supreme Court is the only remotely functional, or I should say the judiciary is the only remotely functional branch of government, and the Supreme Court itself is unfortunately quite corrupt. I disagree with my colleague, Mr. Lasher, here. I do not think we should do court packing. I think, day one, it's ethical standards for the Supreme Court, and then investigations to impeach those who are obviously corrupt, taking corporate money, sharing properties with multimillionaires, and taking gifts from them. Because every single one of us has discounted this fact. Doesn't matter if there's a blue wave in Congress, it matters as the Supreme Court upholds what we pass. So we have to look at what the Republicans have always looked at. It's the judiciary. They can gut Congress, so we must look at them first and make sure they are locked up so we can reclaim our democracy.
Thank you. Mr. Diep.
To protect our democracy, I would say it starts with making sure people turn out to vote. The president is trying to stop people from turning out to vote, make us question it. So we need to really at least from an individual level, model good behavior for our children and encourage them to vote, be informed. I'm really glad that everyone's here so that, we can make a smart choice for this election. I'm really proud of to be up here with these people, these candidates.
Thank you. Mr. Conway?
The reason why I'm running and the singular thing that motivated me to get into this campaign is I want to join forces with people like Jamie Raskin and fight every day to point out the corruption on the floor, in committees, impeachment committee, on television, and ultimately try one last case on the floor of the United States Senate.
Thank you. Mr. Boris?
Once in office, all of the above. But there's something that comes first, which is Trump can control the Republican Party because he's built a super PAC called MAGA Inc. The biggest donor to that super PAC is the biggest donor to the super PAC that's opposing me. The same way that they are trying to control the Republican Party, they are now trying that playbook in Democratic primaries. So the first thing we'll do to get rid of the scourge that's attacking our democracy is by winning this election and showing Democrats throughout the country that they can reject that money and stand up to the Trump mega donors.
Thank you. Can we all give the candidates a round of applause? I want to thank all the candidates and your teams for participating in today's event, and to the members and guests for the informative discussion. This is our final Lunch with the League of the season, so a big thanks to the committee that develops the topics and contacts the guest speakers every month. And thanks to Katie in our office, also the microphone runner, who manages all the details so the events run smoothly. We'll be back in September to kick off our new season, so stay tuned. And before we go, just a few general announcements. Please vote in the citywide participatory budgeting in which the League is a partner organization in the lobby when you leave the building today. The League's annual member meeting is on June 9th, actually in this room. And please make sure to RSVP to the member meeting. And lastly, the League is moving our office on June 30th. We'll send more details in the weeks ahead. And most importantly, please remember to vote. Early voting begins on June 13th, which is also the last day to register to vote. I can't imagine anyone in this room is not registered, but should you know anyone who isn't, that's the last day to register. And the primary election day is June 23rd. I just want to thank everyone again for joining today, asking amazing questions, for your candid answers. And I know we might not all agree on who we support in this election, but I hope we can all agree to support the New York Knicks tonight. Yeah!